What's up, man? Welcome back to the 13th pick. We got Keith Pompey on the show today. He's the host of the Locked On Sixers podcast, as well as a beat writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer. We went over the James Harden, Ben Simmons trade rumors. We went over the season expectations we have for the Sixers, kind of what direction the front office wants to take this team, and then Embiid and Simmons pairing. And Keith brought a lot of insight and knowledge about the team. It was a really great conversation, and make sure you guys stick around and listen to the whole thing. We also put his podcast and his socials in our description along with our socials, so make sure you guys check him out and check us out as well. And make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. But let's get into it. All right, welcome back to the 13th pick. We got a very special guest here with us, Keith Pompey from the Locked On Sixers podcast, as well as the Philadelphia Inquirer. Keith, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. What's up, fellas?
We're just chilling, just chilling. We saw that news came out that they officially made Simmons available in trade talks with Harden. So we just want to get your thoughts on that real quick.
Yeah, it's you kind of knew it was going to happen. I mean, the thing is, they're saying that they didn't do it, so it seems like it was leaked by the Houston Rockets. It was actually leaked a couple days ago by someone. I mean, excuse me, reported a couple days ago. So I mean, you knew it was going to come. You knew it was going to be a matter of time. Um, will it happen? Who knows? But I know it's disrupting the Sixers team chemistry right now that his word is out that Ben Simmons is in the open market, so to speak.
Yeah, do you think that was kind of damage control by Daryl Morey saying that, oh no, that's not true. We're committed to Simmons for a future? Do you think that's kind of like
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: whenever you make a trade, right? You make a trade for, well, whenever you're in trade talks, you really don't want especially your star players, to know it, because if you trade them, that's great. If you don't trade them, the next thing you know, that could mess up team chemistry. The guy won't trust you anymore, things like that. So, in those instances, you always, no matter what, you always say, no, we're not trading him. We love him. He's a part of our future. And then when stuff happens, then you come out and say, well, the offer was so great that we couldn't, we couldn't, turn it down. We
yeah,
couldn't refuse it. So they do that a lot. Yeah, they do that a lot.
yeah, it's all business.
Yeah.
Have they really talked about what the offer was? Like, because I heard it was Ben Simmons, 3 first-round picks, and they're asking for Matisse Thybulle as well. So I'm not sure if that's true or not.
You know what I heard was that it was the excuse me. What I heard was it was Ben Simmons and 3 first round picks. That's what I heard. Now the thing about Matisse, you can also see that. Now here's the thing: Ben makes 30 million. James Harden makes what, 41.2 or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, even though it's not similar, like to say $12 million or close, you have to get within a certain percentage of salaries. So you may need to add Matisse's salary just to even it out a little bit. But
Mm.
that's a lot. I mean, I like James Harden, 2008 MVP, but when you're giving up Ben Simmons and Matisse Thybulle and 3 first round draft picks, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Too much.
So,
We see
so
that.
getting back to that, what are your thoughts on the trade? Do you, as a Philly fan, do you think that they should do this, or do you think it's the wrong direction and they already have like a solidified core with them?
I'm a little mixed on it. My thing is, I like Ben, and I like Ben personally, right? I think the Sixers need to go out there and get like an all-star type player, well, an MVP type player. But it would be best if they can get a guy who they can fit in with the three of them. Like, for instance, they said they always wanted 3 stars, right? So if you had a shooting guard who wasn't as ball dominant, and then possibly he could coexist with Ben. But unfortunately, this year, in order for you to get a guy like Harden, you would have to give up a Ben or a Joel type, you know. Now, I don't even know if I'm Houston at this particular time. Like, do I still want to do it just because I have John Wall? So then I have John Wall and I have Ben Simmons. Like, how are they going to coexist? Because they're two ball dominant players, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
So I keep going back and forth. The Sixers do need a closer. They need a guy who can shoot. But at the same time, Ben Simmons is 24 years old, and he has a lot of potential. So I'm a little split on that one.
Mhm. I just think that if they do get Harden, it was because you see that Elton Brand and Daryl Morey in the past, they do go, whether it works out or not, they do go for these win now type moves. And they kind of see that Ben Simmons so far, when it comes to playoff time, there is a lot of stuff that he has to work on in his game. And we saw it's not that this duo was a bad fit. I just think the team around them was a bad fit. Because we saw that first year that they were in the playoffs together. That should be like the blueprint of how you build a team around Simmons and Embiid. It's surround them with shooters and them do their thing. And it was kind of successful. It was after when they got like the Al Horford contract and all that kind of messed up like the fit of their team. But I think when you get Harden pair him up with Embiid, I think that kind of adds like a multi-dimensional attack to your offense kind of. So I think that might be a better fit in terms of getting success in the playoffs.
Yeah, and you raised a great point. And so when you look at the Eastern Conference, right? So we talk about James Harden. Well, you talk about Brooklyn. Brooklyn has Kevin Durant and they have Kyrie, right? You look at Boston, they have the young duo in Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum, right? You look at Toronto has Kyle Lowry, this and that. In order for the Sixers to compete, they feel as if you got to upgrade, and James Harden would be an upgrade for them, at least in their minds. Like right now, you look at this Sixers team, and you say it like, okay, they got Danny Green, they have Seth Curry, they got Dwight Howard coming off the bench. But if you ask yourself, who is going to be the closer? No one knows who the Sixers closer is. Like you know, and then you say to yourself, like, are they better than they were last year? I mean, honestly, like you look at this team on paper, they have big names, but then you really get down to it. Can they go into Boston and win a series? Can they go in Milwaukee and win a series? What about Miami, Toronto? I mean, I can't answer that question. I don't even know who's going to take the last shot. So with that being said, but if you had a James Harden, you can say to yourself, like, okay, Brooklyn has KD and Kyrie, but the Sixers have James Harden and Joel. And some people may say, wow, that's a legitimate tandem. So, like as you said, it does make them better. The only thing is, it's like, you just got to be. There's also, like you said, it's a win now thing. It's win now. We don't know if Joel Embiid is going to be in the league from 4 years from now, right? We don't know that. So the problem is, even with that, is if Ben Simmons goes somewhere and he blows up, then you have a problem. I personally think that like this was probably going to be in the works, where when the Sixers came out and they kept saying we want to evaluate what we have, I felt like that was true. They were going to go through the season. They were going to see how Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons played together, and the trade deadline is going to be March the 25th. And somewhere around that time, it was about time to pull the trigger, or from and somewhere between now and then. I think that with word leaking out, it kind of messed up everything. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, well, right about now, do we hurry up and just make a trade, or do we just shut off all like conversation? Like, hey, we're not going to deal with it because we can lose Ben Simmons.
Yeah.
You don't want him forcing the trade. So to me, that's where it is. But you raised some great points. I just wanted to give some counter things to it.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that too. But I feel like if you want a guy like James Harden, you would have to trade him before the season begins because I think he's too dynamic of a player to trade him in the trade deadline because Philly always wants to win, right? I feel like they're in that kind
Yeah.
of mode, trust the process, right? So
Mm-hmm.
bringing him after the trade deadline, it's like how is the offense going to work right away with Joel Embiid and
You're
James
right.
Harden?
Yeah.
And I think the other problem with James Harden is how is his game even going to work with Joel Embiid? Because when Harden has the ball, what's Joel Embiid gonna do? And is Harden gonna move without the ball? So like I think those are some really big areas of concern that the Philadelphia 76ers should have regarding James Harden. And also it's kind of weird because I feel like they were banking on Tobias Harris to be that closer, but he clearly wasn't. And now like they had Jimmy Butler before, and they just kind of technically need the same type of player to replace him, but they couldn't get him. So it's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah. What's unfortunate? Like when you think about it, what the Sixers been doing the last couple of years is kind of cleaning up messes.
Yeah.
Like seriously, like they clean up messes. Like for instance, let's say 3 years ago, what they had a bunch of shooters, Ben Simmons and Joel, and they end the regular season by winning 16 consecutive games. But then all of a sudden, instead of bringing those guys back and maybe adding a few defensive guys rotation, they were adamant that they had to go star hunt, right?
Yeah.
We got to go out there and we got to get a superstar. And what happened is they ended up, trading um, Robert Covington,
Mm.
um, who was it? Dario Saric, Jared Bayless, and draft picks for Jimmy Butler. So
Mm.
Jimmy Butler comes here. They also go get Tobias Harris, right? And they gave up their best shooter in Landry Shamet, right? They gave up, so they got rid of Robert Covington and then Landry Shamet. Well, guess what happens? Jimmy Butler leaves. Now you don't have a closer, right? You got rid of all your shooters when you got Al, like, for Al Horford and all this other stuff. So you get rid of Al Horford and you bring in shooters. So basically, you're cleaning up a bad deal that you made in Al, trying to get him off the books. And then you're bringing in these shooters. And now you may have to get rid of one of your all-star players just to get a closer. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like there's a lot going on, and it's like cleanup. That's all they're doing is just cleaning up the mistakes that they made.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So
feel like that's basically what they did this season too. When Daryl Morey came in, he just traded away Al Horford right away, which was a good move because he was a horrible fit alongside Embiid. You get a guy like Danny Green, and then after you trade Richardson for a guy like Seth Curry, which is again like you're saying a cleanup move. I agree with that for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
yeah, so we were talking about how this year is kind of be like a year of evaluation for the roster, see how this duo fits together. So do you kind of think of it as like a make or break year for the duo to see if we need to like separate them in order for both of them to flourish, or what do you think?
I think it is. I do because I think what they're doing is they're saying that we're going out there and we got the shooters. Before everybody said you guys coexist greatly when you had shooters. Now we went out there, we got the shooters. So let's see what you guys can do.
Mhm.
So yeah, with that being said, 100%, this is a make or break year.
So I mean, given that, what do you think would be considered like the break part of it? Do you think it would be conference finals, finals bound? Like if they don't make the conference finals, do you think that's when they have to separate the duo, or just see like how they perform together as opposed to like how far the team makes it?
I think it'd be more about how they perform together. Like let's just say if they perform greatly and they both have heck of a seasons and the people around them crumble, then it's like, okay, well, we may need to get rid of somebody else, someone else to complement those two. Now, again, and I know like a lot of people are going to say you can't win with those two. They don't play well together. But I think if they both have the success, Ben Simmons has a bunch of triple doubles. He's
Mhm.
like one of the leaders. He's leading the league in assists. And Joel Embiid is a double machine, averaging close to 30 points. They're not the problem. It's to some other people. Now you may want to, you could see somebody saying, well, do we need to bring in a different type of shooter? Some, you know what I mean? People to play next to him. But if they struggle and they get bumped in the first round, yeah, like I'm talking about, if one of the two struggles, yeah,
Yeah,
that person is going to they're going to get out. They're going to get rid of them.
yeah. I mean, I think that personally in the future, I don't think that Simmons is just a natural point guard. I think that's probably what the Sixers thought as well, which is why they took Fultz in the draft. But I just think that in the future, if you are gonna keep them together, you probably have to move Simmons to like the point forward role, bring in like a all star caliber type guard. And I think that's probably the way to go if you want to keep them together but still have some success.
Yeah, you know what? Here's the thing with Ben Simmons. Like you said, he's not your traditional point guard. So what you do is like Markel, and I understood the Markel Fultz thing. The problem is it's hard when you have back-to-back first overall picks. You know what I mean? You want to pair them together if they both play the same position. That's not typically not going to work, right?
Mhm.
But we're typically in an ideal situation, you want your two guard to be a secondary ball handler, someone who can, shoot the ball, someone who can be a ball handler. And I think that the fact that Markel struggled shooting the ball, it messed everything up. But like if you take a guy like a Drew Holiday, for instance, who
Yeah.
can play both positions, a Malcolm Brogdon who can play off the ball too as well. these are the type of guys who will really work out well with a Ben Simmons type. Because a lot of times, as Ben Simmons, he could slide down to the floor and he could play point forward. And that other guy, his role would be, I'm gonna kick the ball out to him and he's gonna fire up threes. But at the same time, he can do some of the ball handling as well. So I wasn't really upset with the Markel Folks thing. I just think it didn't work out, but that's the ideal type of player to have with Ben Simmons.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's pretty fair. I feel like Ben Simmons is a great player, but I feel like there are still areas in his game that he could improve on because I feel like I remember his coach before, he always insisted on him shooting threes and he never did that
Hmm.
before either. So I'm not really sure what the relationship was there, but hopefully his relationship with Doc Rivers could change and let's just see what he does with them, right? But I have a question for you. So, do you think either Simmons or Embiid are capable of being the number one option on a championship team? Because obviously we haven't seen it, but from your estimation, do you think they are?
Yeah, it's weird. Like, okay, so here's my thing. So yeah, I think Joel Embiid when he when he comes to play, Joel Embiid is arguably the most dominant player on the floor. I mean, when he comes to play, right?
yeah,
So he could be the number one option. Yes. Ben Simmons. I think that if Ben Simmons had a jump shot
Yeah,
or a mid-range jumper, he would be better than Joel Embiid. That's my opinion, right? Because when you look at the size, you look at the speed, you look at the strength,
yeah,
the only thing that people say he can't do and the thing that's holding him back and making him easier to defend is his lack of shooting, right? So you look at it and you would say, yeah, they both can be. Now, here's the question. Right now, the problem with Joel, now if we're going to say he's the prime target, right? The number one guy, but late in games, everything has to go right. Not just for Joel, but when everything has to go right when you feed a big man, a
yeah,
center. There has to be a great entry pass. What happens if somebody steps in front of the ball, steals it? What if, what I mean, he bobbles the ball? It's like everything has to go right for him to be successful in the clutch. But if Ben Simmons had a jumper, you could just spread the floor and let him go to work. You know what I mean? So from that standpoint, he could become the number one option in the playoffs like that. At this particular time, is he? No. And that's just because of his lack of shooting. It's going to be hard for him to get a shot in the playoffs when you don't, what I mean, you don't keep people honest by at least shooting a jumper.
yeah. But when you see how right now he's not even shooting jumpers, and you see like the progress he has to make to get to that point. First, you gotta start out just making catch and shoot wide open threes. Then you can start moving up to like mid ranges and pull ups and all that. I mean, do you think he's ever gonna get to that point where it just goes beyond catch and shoot, where he can pull up for a mid range, where he can just like set a create his own shot like that? Or do you think it's just gonna be a catch and shoot?
You know what? I don't know. Like, that's a great question to ask. But see, because here's the thing: if you go and you see Ben Simmons work out before the games, he does stuff like that, and you're like, wow, why don't you show it in the game? So it's like, I'm not saying it's a mental thing, but it's up to him. Like, if he wants to unleash it, he can do it. I mean, I remember my first couple of years on the beat, I used to just take videos of him pre-game, and it got to the point where people were getting frustrated because they're like, "You're showing us all this stuff, but he won't do it in the game."
yeah.
So it's up to him, man. Like if he wants to unlock it, then he can. But right now, whatever it is, it just seems like he's not doing it.
Mhm. But thanks a lot, Keith, for the insight you gave us. A lot of good knowledge that a lot of people may not know about the Sixers. Is there anything
Hmm.
you want to add about them before we wrap things up?
About the Sixers,
Yeah.
or yeah, I think people need to be patient. I think that they're going to have to find themselves early on, and once they do that, then they'll be fine. I mean, I don't think that they're going to be as good as everybody else thinks, and that's why I said be patient. I think people think they're going to win the championship. I think they're a year away from being like a serious contender. I think they are. Yeah.
Mm, that's fair.
All right. Thanks a lot for coming on the show, Keith.
Thanks a lot.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. And you guys live in the city that I love to be in, Vancouver.
Vancouver.
All right. Peace.
Take care.
So-
All right.